I have taught him the croup tap to move forward in groundwork. So if he doesn't respond to my leg at a certain lightness, I will refer to tapping his croup with my whip, because I do not want to go heavier than a certain amount of pressure. That's why I have kind of installed a secondary button, if you will. Welcome to Uplift Equine, Bitless horse project. Now, not that you need to know this, but this is the second time that I have recorded the voiceover for this session, because the first time around I completely forgot to turn on the audio recording. So thank you for joining us again. If you are on Patreon, welcome. Welcome to see the entire groundwork portion and the riding portion of this training session. If you are not a Patreon member yet and would like to, please go to our Patreon. The link is in the description below. But yep, if you'd like to see the entire groundwork session prior to the riding session, please join us on Patreon and support us in that fashion. The videos are available for one-time, I want to say purchase, but it's basically a small donation is the smallest that Patreon would allow me to post. But yep, I would appreciate it that way. But if you are just on YouTube, welcome as well. I do appreciate your support by viewing these videos. But here is the riding portion of it. We have already prepared ourselves with groundwork and in-hand work as a pre-flight thing. So now we're going to mount and do our under saddle session. Now for a little bit of context, today he was a little cranky. He was a little tired, wanting to kind of take a nap in the middle of our session. So I am understanding that his attention span might be a little short, but if it ends up being a little bit longer, then that's fine. This session ended up being a little bit longer. I did want to push him a little bit farther than we had during the prior sessions. I may have pushed him a little bit too far, but that is something that, you know, he's teaching me where he's at, I'm teaching him where he needs to go. It's a give and take, a push and pull. You as a trainer or rider need to pay attention to the horse's signals or tells in, you know, whether they're getting weaker, like, you know, they're hitting their max of strength and then they're just going to get a little bit weaker. You want a little bit of that. You want to hit their max and then go a tiny bit farther if you're doing more physical training stuff. And a lot of this stuff is physical training. For him, since hasn't really done much of anything, is 12 rides, and this is his third ride this season. Just me being on his back is a lot, because he's not used to carrying, much less carrying 128 pounds with a 2-pound saddle or a 2-pound bareback pad. So yeah, you just gotta understand that. And the horse generally brings what the horse is gonna bring that day, and if they have been allowed to communicate to people, they'll generally quite easily tell you where they're at. Some horses are a little bit more stoic. Horses that have been trained in kind of not nice ways tend to be a bit more stoic, or the opposite of stoic, very not expressive, but just, and I don't want to say violent either, but so a lot of you horse people would know what I mean by horses that get frustrated because they have been somewhat abused during prior sessions. Some people would describe that as nasty or belligerent, but we won't go into that today. But I am discovering what he's going to bring to the table as we kind of go around the arena. I'm allowing him to kind of just wander around by himself with me as a passenger. As I ride around with him, I am paying attention to my seat. I want to make sure that my hips are as wide as they should be. So as somebody in her mid-30s, I have stiff days, and sometimes I don't realize how stiff my hips are until I get on him. So I use some of this time that I'm allowing him to just walk around. I use that to pay attention and focus on my hips and my own position before I start asking him to do something with that seat. So I make sure that my lower back is moving, my pelvis is moving with him properly, and that my hips are as open as they should be before giving him any signals. Because if I'm too stiff, he will naturally stiffen against me. And I don't want him to get into that habit. So henceforth, I am going to check myself before asking him to do anything. Now here, that's the part of the arena where there tends to be different sounds and smells. I want to say sights, but since he can't see very well, it's mostly sounds and smells. There is another horse over there in a round pen. So I just allow the horses that I train to look at something if they see it as scary. Because remember, it's not that they're trying to, quote, get out of work. If they see something that they're concerned about, they want to make sure that they're not going to die. And in turn, that you're not going to die either. So it's their natural instinct to check it out or run. And since I want him to be a good, safe horse, I want to tell him, hey, I understand that there's something different over there. I want you to check it out. We don't have to get closer, but I want you to check it out. And when we have determined it is safe, we will move forward. So I'm not allowing him to run, but I do want him to learn how to kind of self-soothe. And when he's realized something is not dangerous, to move on and focus on what we were doing. This will eventually turn into him just not really paying attention to things or getting distracted by things more like. But since he is still very young and we are still working through a lot of training things, the behavior things, I'll allow him that bit of peace. You just gotta know there will be a point B. We just have to travel from point A to point B. And to add to that, in that travel from point A to point B, we want it to be a calm, safe manner where he is not going to stack his stress on top of another stress. And instead, I want him to learn how to start ignoring things that aren't a threat to his immediate safety. And the other thing that I'm paying attention to, as I understand, he is a sight-impaired horse. He knows how big he is at this point in his life. But what he is not paying attention to or doesn't understand, as I graze my ankle on a barrel, is how wide he is with my legs around him. So he doesn't necessarily really see or perceive my legs around him with his eyes. So when he gets close to an object such as a fence post, something that won't feel very good when my knee hits it, I have to pay attention to guiding him away from that, because he's not going to naturally guide himself away. He may in the future. So what we're starting here is that circle around the barrel. And I know it's kind of a small circle. A 10-meter circle is a bit much for a horse that has just started training. But he has a interesting comfort zone thing. So if he sees something as a focal point, he will try to kind of keep it in his field of vision as like a little fuzzy smudge, which that I've noticed that tends to be about 5 meters. So that 10-meter circle is his comfort zone around objects, it seems. And he tends to stay at a 10-meter circle when he is in his comfort zone around me when we lunge. So that I think that's kind of an indicator as well. So I am facing the barrel, I'm spotting the barrel, I'm in my peripheral vision, slightly, my vision is slightly ahead of the barrel, if that makes any sense. I don't want to be looking back or twisting my body too far because I want him to have a somewhat of an arc instead of sharp points. Again, I'm not looking for perfection here because he is young, inexperienced. This is our 3rd ride of the season. I have very simple and basic things that we're focusing on, and I'm not looking for perfection at this time. I'm also looking to have him reach into the contact with his nose. So I know he knows forward down, he will relax, and I'm experimenting with a little bit more contact, trying to get him into a working walk. But I'm not going to force it. I'm not going to force it at all, but especially this session. It is a light introduction by picking up a little bit more contact with his face. Now we have visitors that came, which kind of changed my training session a little bit, but that's something that you need to know about with flexibility. You need to be flexible. If something happens, maybe you focus on that thing that happened that day. Or maybe you focus on that for a short period of time and then get back to whatever you were doing. So we have a van coming in, and since he was a little startled by that, I want him to watch it and look at it until his body starts to relax. That's when I will ask him to move on and get back to what we were doing when his body relaxes. But right now he's a little bit stiff and a little bit suspicious. And this also harkens back to what I was talking about in the beginning of this video, where I want him to learn how to self-soothe. So it's okay to look at something that you're not sure about. It's okay to snort at it and relax when you figure out that it's not a threat. It is not okay to turn and run. So those are the parameters around checking something out. There are very few situations where I will actually tell him to turn and run and be ready to do that and be ready to stay on his back. One of those situations I did actually come upon when I was training another horse. I was 14 and I was training this whole thing as well, just to turn and look at it and make sure it's not a threat. But I was training this 20-something off the range Mustang, and he was really more of a pony. I was much shorter when I was 14, but he seemed more like a horse when I was 4'6". But we were riding on a trail one day, and we came across a coyote. And a coyote with some pups, I think, because she was not moving. She was ready to go after us. So it was not a situation where you could just quietly walk away. She was ready to chase, and honestly, I think I would have handled it a little bit differently being a more experienced adult. But at the time, I'm like, let's just run back. So I said, all right, it's okay, turn and run, let's go. And he did. And we went back to discovering things and not turning and running. And he actually didn't have a problem with that for the rest of the time I trained him, and for the rest of his life, I think, because I've somewhat kind of stayed in contact with his owner. But we are back. We have greeted our friends and discovered that the vein is not going to attack us. So we are looking to go around the barrel. So I'm not, like I said, I'm not looking for a perfect circle. I'm looking for the barrel to stay somewhat in the middle of the circle, but not perfectly. I felt him drop his shoulder a little bit, so that's why I stopped him, and now I'm rubbing him, saying that portion of the circle was good. We did a good job going that direction. Now let's move on and hopefully not drop our shoulder this time. Now I have taught him the croup tap to move forward in groundwork. So if he doesn't respond to my leg at a certain lightness, I will refer to tapping his croup with my whip, because I do not want to go heavier than a certain amount of pressure. That's why I have kind of installed a secondary button, if you will. He's getting a little tired now since it's entering the end portion of our session. I want him to move on a little bit farther. I'm pushing him a little bit farther than he's comfortable with, because right now he just told me that he is good to stop. So I said, all right, well, you're good to stop. Let's get you going a little bit farther. Get him to back up. Now we got the turn on the forehand. I am asking him to do this, by the way. I'm giving him more and more praise because I know it's towards the end, and I know his attention span, I'm kind of losing him a little bit. But I am trying to give him a good experience with that last portion. So he's dropping his shoulder a little bit again. So we'll stop, rebalance a little bit. See if we'll guide his head over to look where we're trying to go, or where I am trying to go with him. We'll back up a little bit. Because as you can see, towards the end, he's dropped his sling a bit, and he's camped himself out, so he is tired. And again, I have pushed him a little bit farther than I probably would have, so I am going to wear a watch now. I think I lost track of time a little bit when our friends came. It is not their fault, but I need to put in a process where I don't lose track of time. So hence watch. Because being young and being inexperienced and not as strong as an adult horse, I need to be aware of how much time I'm spending on top of him. but he's being a good sport about it. So I'm asking him to get within kind of a 10-foot vicinity of the mounting block, because eventually I would like to work on getting him to stand next to the mounting block while I dismount onto it. It's just one of those things. I'm gonna have him into my 60s, you know, Lord willing. So I want to make sure that I put in processes where I'm going to have an easy time getting off of him, especially in the winter when if you dismount from that distance, your legs and joints are going to feel like they're shattering. So he did a good job. I only clipped a little bit of portion out where he spent too much time rubbing his nose on a fence while I was talking to somebody. So I'm not cutting out any kind of different content that prevents you from watching any kind of abuse. I don't abuse. I just didn't want you to have to endure 2 to 3 extra minutes just looking at the empty arena. But so that he enjoys the end of his session and that he gets rewarded a bit, I let him eat some grass in the arena while I cleaned up my equipment and my mess and my camera, and talked to my friends a little bit. And then I caught him a bit later and brought him back to his field. But I do want him to enjoy his sessions. I want him to look forward to them. So hence the positive reinforcement, encouragement while under saddle, some treats while in groundwork, and then the end where he gets to have some sweet grass that is not typically grazed. So he's got some quite a few patches of sweet clover that nobody has touched. So that's a good reward for him, and he does look forward to that. So for other positive reinforcement training, the emotional horsemanship people are really good. There are quite a few others out there, but I like to endorse people that I know. I don't personally know him, but I know his channel and I like how he does things. So I'll put a link to that below as well as the Patreon. The type of training that I do is obviously positive reinforcement training, which is a little bit different than the pure definition of positive reinforcement. It's a reinforcement of the behavior in a positive way using something that is highly valued by the horse. So such as a treat, or such as praise, or it could be just leaving them alone. It depends on what is more valued by the horse, and that's something you have to discover with when you build your initial relationship with your horse. Are they food motivated? Are they praise motivated? Are they peace motivated? Or if they're food motivated, are they a little bit too food motivated where they completely lose focus if they have something? You just have to find that out with your horse. Every horse is a little bit different. For Revan here, food motivation, like those specific treats that I use, they don't have any sugar in them. So it doesn't get him hyped up on sugar. And that's a big thing. If there's something that gets a horse hyped up on sugar, or gets too big of a shot of dopamine, so like sugar causes a shot of dopamine, that's why it's addictive. That's why we get addicted to it, or anybody gets addicted to it. I try to keep sugar out of those treats. But he is very treat motivated to the extent where he tries harder when he has one. We have backed off a little bit as he is getting older, and it's not as elementary of training. We are going through things that he knows, so if he knows something, we're going to do a few more of the things that he knows before he earns a treat. But he also knows the praise, he also knows the breaks, so I use all of those things with him, and he values all of those things differently. But some horses don't care for treats. My last horse, Delilah, my mare, she didn't really care for treats unless you put it in her bucket and she had it in her stall. But she very much valued a good pat, a good girl, and her breaks. She definitely tried harder when you gave her praise and gave her a break. So every horse is a little bit different. You have to discover what your horse likes best. And that goes into relationship building. But thanks for watching. Thanks for participating. If you want to see more of these videos more often, please like and subscribe. And if you would like to get a little bit deeper and support us in a deeper fashion, please go to and check out our Patreon and check us out there. If you do decide to support us in a deeper fashion, just like that, and on Patreon, you will get a few perks, just so you know. But thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful time with your horse. All right, have a good one.